Mr. Weston was a native of Highbury, and born of a respectable family. He had received a good education, and social temper, by entering into the militia of his country. Captain Weston was a general favorite, and when the chances of his military life had introduced him to Miss Churchill, and Miss Churchill had fell in love with him, nobody was surprised, except her brother and his wife, who were full of pride and importance which the connection would offend. Miss Churchill, however, being of age, was not to be dissuaded from the marriage, and it took place, to the infinite notification of Mr. and Mrs. Churchill, who threw her off with due decorum. It was an unsuitable connection, and did not produce much happiness. Mrs. Weston, though resolute enough to pursue her own will in spite of her brother, was not resolute enough to refrain from unreasonable regrets at her brother's unreasonable anger, nor from missing the luxurious of her former home. Captain Weston, when his wife died, after a 3 years' marriage, was rather a poorer man than at first, and with a child to maintain. From the expense of the child, however, he was soon relieved. Mr. and Mrs. Churchill, having no children of their own, offered to take the whole charge of the little Frank, soon after her death. Some scruples and some reluctance the widower father may be supposed to have felt, but as they were overcome by other considerations, the child was given up to the care and the wealth of the Churchill. A complete change of life became desirable. He quitted the militia and engaged in trade, having brothers already established in a good way in London, which afforded him a favorable opening. It was now some time since Miss Taylor had begun to influence his schemes, but it had not shaken his determination of never settling till he could purchase Randalls. He had made his fortune, bought his house, and obtained his wife, and was beginning a new period of existence. As to Frank, he was more than being brought up as his uncle's heir, and had assumed the name of Churchill on coming of age. He saw his son every year in London, and was proud of him, and his fond report of him as a very fine young man, and had made Highbury feel a sort of pride in him too. Mr. Frank Churchill was one of the boasts of Highbury, and a lively curiosity to see him prevailed. His coming to visit his father had been often talked of but never achieved. Now, upon his father's marriage, it was very generally proposed that the visit should take place, and the hope strengthened when it was understood that he had written to his new mother on the occasion. It was, indeed, a highly prized letter. Mrs. Weston had formed a very favorable idea of the young man, and such a pleasing attention was an irresistible proof of his great good sense. She knew that at times she must be missed, but there was much comfort in the very easy distance of Randalls from Hartfield.